everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Robin, or Hobbit's Reading List, and today we are going to figure out what I will be reading in March. Now, March is and isn't busy. I am going on a road trip to go stay with my dad for a week. Chris is coming with me, so I will have time to relax and to read, but I also have some events during March, as always. I have book clubs, so it's gonna be very chaotic. It's always chaotic with me, so let's get into it. If you haven't seen my TBR game before, I play TBR Pursuit. It is using the Lord of the Rings Trivia Pursuit board. Each color represents the 6 most common genres on my physical TBR, which are romance, classic, LGBT, Jewish, psychology, and fantasy. And then I also have the I also have the miscellaneous spots, the bigger spots at the end of the spokes, that will round out the rest of my books, because I don't just stick to those 6 genres. I do also have an option. It's the roll again spot that will add an additional book to my TBR. So that's sort of how it goes. I do 7 rolls, more if I land on a roll again, which I won't necessarily try to avoid because I don't have a ton going on this month. So if I get 8 or 9 books, that's fine. The only other thing I wanted to sort of talk about before I get into the actual game, I'm kind of changing my consequence book. Previously, if I had not read more than, I think, 2 books on my TBR, then I would get a consequence book for the next month. And if I did finish all of my books for TBR, I would go book shopping. But I go book shopping all the time anyway, so that's not really a reward, but whatever. But I'm gonna change the threshold for a consequence book to 3. If I don't finish more than 3 books on my TBR, then I will get a consequence. Because a lot of times what ended up happening was that I would get really close. I would be on the second to last book of the month, not finish it, and have to get a consequence book, and that's just not fair. And plus, I don't think it's entertaining if I get a consequence book every month. So more than 3, and typically I have anywhere from, realistically I have anywhere from 9 to 13 books on my TBR, so if I don't finish more than 3 of them, then I will get a consequence. So I just wanted to address that a little bit, to make things just a little bit more realistic. But let's get into the game. I'm super excited to see what I'm gonna read. Okay, so for the first roll, I kind of get to choose where I start. I don't really know. The only thing I know is I want to read more spring-ish books, but that's not really that's not genre specific. So I don't know what direction I want to go in. 1. Okay, great. Well, I don't want psychology. I could do romance. What are the books that I have to... Alright. Okay, so I have 2 books that I have to read in March. One of them will have to be probably in a miscellaneous. The other one is a classic. I'm gonna go ahead and go for classic just to see what direction I'm gonna go in. And watch the book that I have to read not fit in. Oh, it's a feel-good! Okay. I could maybe make that work. Maybe. Okay. For a classic that is a feel-good, I went ahead and said that my Wodehouse book of the month is going to be a feel-good classic. I think it will be, even though it's meant to be a feel-good. It's meant to be funny. Wodehouse is a comedic writer, and hopefully I will laugh. I don't have the highest hopes for this. A Prefect's Uncle is his 2nd published work, It's also a school story, which means it's set in typically a boys' school. And I read the first book that he published, which was The Pot Hunters, and it was just kind of like all over the place. And I think this will probably be about the same. But it's supposed to be funny, therefore it fits. So I guess we'll see what happens. As always, I don't really know much about the Wodehouse book because I try to go in completely blind. I've already said everything I know about it. So move on to book number 2. Okay, so for book 2, 1, okay. So that's psychology. It'd be great if I could move a little bit more. And a one-word title. A psychology book that is a one-word title. Okay. Alright, a psychology book that is a one-word title. I kind of cheated on this, I'm not going to lie. I went with Attachment by Cristina Reese. I have had this book on my TBR probably about twice now. Attachment is the main title. This is just all a subtitle. Therefore, it fits. It's all about attachment theory throughout the stages of development and how it impacts people. And it's just something that I find interesting. Alright, let's see if I can move a little bit more for roll 3. Okay, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. I wanted Miscellaneous to try to get the book that I have to read. It's a history book. I think that works. I think it's historical fiction, but I think it works. Yay! For a Miscellaneous book that is history, I am going to be reading The Great Alone by Kristin, I believe. So this is a book club book that my aunt picked, and it is a historical fiction. It's set in 1974. That's history. And it's about this man who fought in Vietnam. After Vietnam, he decides to move him and his family up to Alaska. And while the summer in Alaska, they do actually do very well. They blend in with the community. In the winter, where, you know, it's 18 hours of darkness, the veteran's mental health starts suffering. And his wife and daughter sort of have to figure out how to survive. And I don't know if it means, like, survive as in he's trying to kill them, or just survive with their mental health intact. So it should be interesting. It's big. But I will be reading it and seeing how that goes. Okay, for book 4. Okay, now we have options. Cool. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Get me back to psychology. I'm not going to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4 is classic. Don't necessarily want to. 1, 2, 3, 4 is another psychology. I guess I'm going for classic. Typically, I try to only have one nonfiction book a month because that's about all I can do because it's really slow reading for me. So I will probably avoid psychology for the rest of the game. So, okay. Another classic. Which, classic can be springy, depending on the book. If I can, there we go. Okay, it's a classic that is a one-word title, which I think I have plenty of those. For a classic that is a one-word title, I went ahead and I don't have that many. I had 2, and I picked up the one that I found more exciting. So I will be reading Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And it is a horror book. I usually try to read pretty seasonally, but obviously my TBR game kind of makes it difficult sometimes. And it's more of a psychological horror. I don't know a ton about it, but I know that there's this girl, I don't know her name, but she marries a widower and moves into their house. Yeah. Moves into his house, but it seems like it is haunted by the ghost of his dead wife, Rebecca. And I picked it up mainly because one of my friends who recently published a horror anthology made a comparison to Daphne du Maurier's work, and so when I saw the Rebecca in the bookstore, I'm like, well, let me go ahead and pick it up. Because if the writing is similar to my friend's, then I should really like it. So for roll 5, choose. So it'd be fantasy or a roll again. So now we're gonna go for 8 books. So this is still roll 5, but now it's a 6. Okay, cool. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is fantasy. It will also be fantasy. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 psychology. Nope. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 psychology. Okay, we're gonna do fantasy. Okay, it's a fantasy with a war or battle feature, and I, for some reason, wrote LOL at the bottom. Probably because I assumed that almost all fantasy has a war or battle featured in it. But, you know, whatever. For a fantasy book that is a war or battle featured, I did Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Now listen, some people may argue this is a classic because of Pride and Prejudice. I disagree. Some people may argue that zombies are not fantasy. I somewhat agree, but I filtered Storygraph. This was included in the fantasy list. I have a video idea that requires me to read this. Thus I'm reading it. It's exactly what it says on the tin. It's Pride and Prejudice with zombies. I don't have high hopes for it. I don't think I'm going to like the zombie aspect, sort of. I feel it's just going to be thrown in there, and I'm not going to like that, and I've had that somewhat confirmed. So, we'll see. Alright, so roll 6. 6, alright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is miscellaneous. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is roll again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Jewish. I'm already at 8 books, so I don't necessarily want to add another one, like, right now. I'm going to go for Miscellaneous, because it's closest to the camera. Oh, interesting. Alright, science fiction. I don't have a ton of that, but okay. For a miscellaneous book that is science fiction, I picked up Bonds of Brass by Emily Skrutskie. Skrutskie? Yeah. I picked this up a really long time ago. Well, I don't know, like 8 months ago. Maybe not that long ago. I remember that the main guy, Etienne, his home planet was destroyed, and he goes into the military school, and he makes friends with his classmate named Gal. But it's revealed that Gal is actually the heir to the Empire, who is responsible for destroying Etienne's planet. And there's also the added drama of Etienne being kind of, in love with Gal. So it should be interesting. I've heard mixed reviews, but it's pretty quick. We'll see what happens. For roll 7 of 8, 6, and now I'm evil because that's the third 6 in a row I've gotten. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Jewish. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fantasy. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Jewish or fantasy. I will go ahead and go Jewish since I've gotten that option twice now. And I don't have any yet. Ooh, yay! Feel good. I'm loving the feel good books. For a Jewish book that is feel good, I picked up Last Summer at the Golden Hotel. So this is about a hotel resort in the Catskills. It's been running for 60 years. It's owned and operated by these two families, but over time there have been fractions in that relationship, and they are presented with an offer to sell the hotel, so everyone has to come in and make a decision, which means that like drama and stuff is going to happen. But I think it's supposed to be very heartwarming, so that's why I think it's going to be feel good. So we'll see we'll see what happens. That's closer to like the spring vibes that I wanted, even though it's like definitely a summer book, but that's fine. Alright, so for potentially the last roll, 1. I could do Miscellaneous again, or I could roll again. I did say in my intro that my TBRs are typically 9 to 13, and now that I've probably gotten both books that I needed to read on my TBR, I'm only at 8. So let's be chaotic and have my cat completely block the board so that you can't see what I'm doing. That sounds like a great idea. Reese, I'm making very passive-aggressive comments that you should move, and you're not picking up on it. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay. Oh, now is there another one? Or was that his tail? No, that was his tail. There's no other cat around me. I'm going crazy. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and add another book. So now we have 2 more. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 is classic. 2, 3, 4. Just roll again. I probably don't need to add another one. Psychology. Okay. Which way do you... Well, you moved me towards classic. Do you want me to read another classic book? I feel like 2 classics in 1 month might be a lot. They're not the easiest thing to read. But my only other option is to roll again. Which would get me to 10. Do I want to be that chaotic? Fine. Okay. Now I need 3 more books. Jeez, alright. 6, alright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's fantasy. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is also fantasy. 3, 4, 5, 6. Psychology. Okay. So another fantasy book. I'll go ahead and move over here. Reese is completely blocking the lower half of the board. Okay. A fantasy that is an audiobook. Cool. For a fantasy that is an audiobook, I went ahead and picked up Warrior Witch by Danielle Jensen. This is the final book in the Malediction trilogy, which is about a girl, Cecile, who had been kidnapped and taken underneath the Forsaken Mountain, where she discovers a community of trolls have been trapped, and she agrees to try to free them. And this is the resolution to that plot line. There's a lot more involved. I really, really liked the first book. I really liked the second book. And so I'm really interested to see how it wraps up. Second to last roll. I'm going to really try not to add another book. Psychology. My options are psychology or roll again. Why did I add another book? I really don't want another psychology book. I really don't want to do that to myself. I already have 2 classics and a psychology book. I really... Alright, we're gonna have 11 books. Because I... Fantasy or classic? Alright, cool. I'm gonna be reading a lot of fantasy, apparently. and it's a fantasy with an odd number of pages. So when I'm determining this, I go by when the story ends, not the total number of pages in the book. Just be clear. For a fantasy that is an odd number of pages, this, I don't think it's cheating. The Atlas of Middle-earth by Wynn Fonstad. So it's about Middle-earth fantasy. But it also has a lot of like, oh, that doesn't have any maps. It has a lot of maps. But it also has a lot of words. So I don't think this is going to be as easy of a read as I think it is. But I think it's also just something that would be useful to know, especially because currently right now I'm listening to the Silmarillion, and a lot of it is set in Beleriand, which in the time of Lord of the Rings does not necessarily exist anymore. And so it'd be nice to sort of look through the map and see a lot of the places that is discussed in the Silmarillion. Alright, for the hopefully second to last book, let's get a bigger number. Fuck me. Okay. You know what, guys? I might just have to do another psychology book. maybe I can pick a short one. Because, I've had 12 books on my TBR before, but now I feel like I'm getting into the area where I really am just asking for a consequence book in April. But the psychology book might really slow me down. And if I... Okay, we're gonna do it. So now we're at 12 books on my TBR. This is, oh my god. Thank you. Just get out of the one roll hell. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just roll again. Jewish. Alright, I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna hopefully get something. Okay, great. Winter vibes. Cool. That's great. Okay, for a Jewish book with winter vibes, I went with Mistletoe and Mishigas by M.A. Wardell. The author writes teacher smut. He has 3 books. All of them have at least one of the characters being a teacher. This is about Sheldon, who is a new first grade teacher. He just moved to the area. He moved in the middle of the school year, so he doesn't have like a lot of time to get set up, so he enlists the help of Theo, who is the custodian, and both of them have events coming up where they need a date, essentially. Sheldon has his ex-boyfriend's wedding, and Theo has Hanukkah, and he told his parents that he has a boyfriend, and so they both agree to pretend to be each other's boyfriend for these events, and as they're sort of like preparing, they end up getting closer. And it should be, honestly, it should be really, really fun. And I really like the first book that I read by M.A. Wardell, so this should be along the same lines. I'm not going to say anything now. This is my 11th roll. And I guess I'm just going to go back to Jewish because my only other option is psychology, and my rule of only one psychology book a month is really getting to me now. A Jewish book with the best cover, which, okay, cool. A Jewish book that has the best cover. Boy, these are, there's a lot of books in this. Farrell Covington and the Limits of Style. So, I really like this cover. I can't explain why. I just think it's, like, really well done. I know this book follows this guy, Farrell, as it starts in college and it follows it throughout his life. And so I believe it goes, like, 40 years. Okay, so I just looked and it actually goes throughout, like, 50 years. Essentially, this guy, Farrell, he comes from, like, a very well-off family. And when he goes to Yale, he ends up meeting this guy, Nate, who is an aspiring writer from a nice Jewish family. And they end up falling in love, and it follows their story. It doesn't say whether or not they ever come out, but I kind of think they do, especially because it mentions, you know, the AIDS epidemic, and, like, it says the freedom of gay life in 1970, so I think they do come out at some point, but I know at the beginning they're not. And so I've had it on my list for a little bit, and I think it'll be really interesting, especially because, like, I am really fascinated by, you know, LGBT history, and so getting to see the different parts of it in different ways, the culture, you became very prominent and then became very repressed, and the AIDS epidemic, and it'll be really, really interesting. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, this is going to be my last roll. I am not going to add another book no matter what my other choices are, which means I will probably have to be forced to pick up another psychology book. 5. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fantasy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So we're gonna go back to fantasy. I don't typically think of spring as like a fantasy book kind of time, but maybe I will change my mind because I have no other option. Oh, interesting. Summer vibes. A fantasy book with summer vibes. Okay. And we're at the last one. Holy crap. I did this to myself. I don't know why. Alright, a fantasy with summer vibes. I went with Lore Olympus Volume 2 by Rachel Smith. So, I will not lie. The main reason that I decided this was summer vibes is because I have Persephone and Hermes half naked, just hanging out. Therefore it's warm, therefore it's summer. That's my logic. Because honestly, I could think of like a couple books off the top of my head that are definitely summer vibes, but they're not fantasy. And mythology is pretty close to fantasy. That's my logic. And also, I just needed like a quick read. And this is still like a lot of pages. This is thick. But I also know that I can read it very quickly. So, so those are all the books that I'll be reading in March, hopefully. I'm excited about a lot of them, actually. And we'll just have to see how this goes. So, leave a comment if you've read any of these books or want to read any of these books. I'm totally willing to do a buddy read. And like the video, subscribe, click the notification bell so that you get notified every time I upload a new video, which are usually vlogs so that you can see my reactions to the books in real time. And yeah, I'm gonna go and try to finish the books I'm currently reading so I can get started on this stack. So